What up guys, Gozen here for Anime Uproar, and today we are making a video based on this very interesting suggestion. That's right, today we are going to be ranking the top 10 worst quirks in My Hero Academia. If you guys have a video you really want to see, leave your suggestion in the comments and it may just be the next video we make. Now, before I go on, I want to make something clear. Any quirk can be useful if you know how and when to use it, and this includes the quirks on this list. Not to mention the fact that quirks can be honed and improved upon through practice. So what is more important than the quirk in many cases is the user and how they make use of their quirk. As Crimson Riot says, as long as you have a manly spirit, it doesn't matter what kind of quirk you have. However, you guys asked for it, so in this video I'll share the top 10 worst quirks in my opinion. Although these quirks can be useful in specific contexts, when it comes to fighting against opponents with quirks of their own, I feel that these 10 quirks are quite weak in general. It should also be noted that most of the quirks we have seen so far belong to pro heroes or students that have been accepted into prestigious heroes schools. So it's not like these quirks are going to be completely terrible or useless, they just don't measure up to the other quirks in my view. Feel free to let me know about your own personal picks for worst and weakest quirk in the comment section below. By the way, we just created a poll on Twitter about what type of videos Anime Uproar should make in the future. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at Anime Uproar and vote for your favorite option. If you enjoy My Hero Academia videos and want to see more of them, make sure to smash that like button and let me know. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'll do my best to avoid major spoilers in this video in case you haven't caught up to the manga. Now, without further ado, let's do this. Number 10. First up, we have Kosei Tsubaraba from class 1B, and his quirk is Solid Air. The quirk type is emitter and it works at close range. Solid Air is pretty self-explanatory. It lets Kosei solidify air and create a barrier in the process. Using his breath, he can create a solid wall, and its potential size is limited by Kosei's own lung capacity. It's interesting to note that the air walls will not fall to the ground, but rather they will stay afloat even if other characters are hanging off of them. So this quirk sounds like it could be pretty useful. It can create a barrier to deflect attacks or prevent people from following Kosei, especially if they are indoors within a relatively confined space, so that the opponent cannot simply go around the wall. There's no effective offensive capabilities that we've seen for this quirk, but at least it can theoretically make for a good defense, right? Well, not really. Bakugo can break the barrier with a punch that doesn't even cause any noticeable damage to his hand. So at its most useful, the quirk may be able to slow the enemy down a bit. Perhaps Kosei can make the air wall stronger with practice, but as of now, I definitely think this is one of the weakest quirks that we've seen in My Hero Academia. Number 9. Mustard is a member of the League of Villains Vanguard Action Squad, and his quirk is called Sleep Gas. His quirk lets him generate and control this gas, and obviously anyone who inhales too much of it will fall asleep. So although it will not directly hurt the opponent, it seems like a pretty useful quirk, kind of like Jigglypuff's lullaby. However, there are significant drawbacks. Imagine if Jigglypuff made herself fall asleep every time she sang. That's more or less the situation with Mustard. He is not immune from his own sleep-inducing gas, which means he always has to wear a gas mask, and that makes it much more difficult to catch enemies off guard, because everyone would be suspicious if they just saw a dude with a gas mask walk in. There are also many ways around the power. If the opponent has a gas mask, can make a gas mask like Momo, or is fast enough to steal Mustard's gas mask, then the quirk is rendered useless. Furthermore, it is easy to disperse the gas if you have a quirk or weapon that can produce gusts of wind, like Big Fist. Finally, the fact that Mustard has to carry around a revolver shows how weak and insufficient his quirk is. He still needs a conventional weapon to make up for the failings of his quirk. Number 8. Yuga Aoyama is a member of Class 1A, and his quirk is called Naval Laser. Naval Laser lets Yuga shoot short or long range beams from his belly button, and he can even use the recoil of the beam to propel himself through the air at high speeds. This could have been a good quirk if it were not for its major limitation. If Yuga uses it for more than a second or two, he'll get a stomachache, rendering him unfit for battle. Apparently, if he uses it too much, his stomach can even collapse. Furthermore, he is always wearing his sparkle belt when he uses the power, suggesting that if he were to lose or break the belt, he wouldn't be able to use his power at all. Although useful at times, all of its conditions and side effects make Yuga's quirk one of the worst in my view. Number 7. Also a member of Class 1A, Minoru Mineta and his quirk Pop-Off come in at 7th place. Mineta's quirk lets him produce sticky balls on his head that he can pull off and throw at opponents. If he's lucky, Mineta's quirk can trap the enemy in place. He can stick people to the wall, to the floor, to objects, or to other people. The stickiness does not affect Mineta, and the balls will grow back, but if he uses the power too much, he will start to bleed. All Mineta's signature move, Grape Rush, involves is him running towards his opponent, throwing his balls at them, and hoping that they get stuck so he can escape by running past them. In certain situations, Mineta's quirk can complement other quirks nicely, but on its own, it is quite weak. It does not make for a good attack or defense, especially if the opponent is fast and agile. It will be interesting to see how Mineta's usage of his quirk evolves, but for now, it seems like using his quirk in combination with other quirks, like he did when facing off against villains at the USJ, rather than trying to take on opponents by himself, is his best bet. Number 6. Yosetsu Awase is a Class 1B student and his quirk is called Weld. This quirk is similar to Mineta's, but it works at close range, while Mineta's can work from a variety of distances. Weld allows Yosetsu to meld or fuse things together if he is touching both objects. So, the end result is more or less the same as Pop-Off, but it is much more difficult to use. Yosetsu needs to be touching both objects or people he wants to meld together, so the technique would be useless against all but the slowest opponents. He would probably be the star employee in an automobile factory, but on the battlefield his quirk is pretty useless and even less versatile than Mineta's. Number 5. Mei Hatsune is from Class 1H. She's from UA's Department of Support, where she helps fix, improve, and create cool hero equipment. Her quirk is called Zoom, and just like it sounds, it lets her zoom into faraway objects or people. Her quirk is kind of like having glorified binoculars built into your eyes. It is impressive that she can see things from up to 5 kilometers away, but it's a pretty useless quirk when it comes to combat, especially since your opponent will, in all likelihood, be relatively close to you, rendering the zoom power unnecessary. However, Mei's real power comes from her mind. Her intelligence is an impressive 5 out of 5 according to the My Hero Academia databook. She uses her brains to create powerful and useful weapons. Her quirk probably comes in handy while she is creating her inventions, but not so much on the battlefield. In the end, there's a reason that she needed to use her inventions to compete against the other students during the tournament arc. Rather than the hero program, she definitely belongs in the Department of Support, and it's pretty clear that she prefers it this way. After all, she only competed in the tournament so that she could show off her inventions to potential investors. Hatsune will always be more of a genius inventor than a fighter. Number 4. Next up we have Misaki Mizushima, aka the Pro Hero Manual, aka Moomin Rider. No, but seriously, as soon as we were introduced to Manual, I couldn't help but think of Moomin Rider from One Punch Man. They're just super ordinary dudes who just want to help others. Even the kanji in Masaki can be read to mean regular or ordinary. In fact, Manual is so ordinary or average that he got 3 out of 5 in every category in the My Hero Academia databook. His quirk is generically called Water Quirk. It simply lets him gather some water around his hands. Perhaps this would help him fight against fire Pokemon, but I can't see it being very useful in the My Hero Academia world. It's safe to assume, as with Moomin Rider, Manual primarily relies on his physical strength when fighting opponents rather than relying on any kind of quirk or superpower. Although, personally, that only makes me respect these two heroes even more. Taking on dangerous criminals or villains without any good superpowers is a sign of true courage. Number 3. Next we have Deku's mom, Inko Midoriya. I thought her quirk would be related to the waterfalls that regularly spring from her eyes, but no. Her actual quirk has been referred to as attraction of small objects. She can, surprise surprise, attract small objects to her body. Now this power would be awesome for everyday use. You could attract the remote to you if it's out of reach without getting off the couch, or you could get your car keys if they fall on the ground without bending over to pick them up. So it's definitely a convenient power to have when you're feeling kind of lazy, but in terms of combat, it's definitely one of the weakest quirks. It would be cool if Inko could control small objects, like a small but deadly blade, but she can't really control anything. She can't send anything in an opponent's direction, only bring it slowly to herself. In the end, although it could be a fun and useful quirk for a civilian to have, it would not serve a hero well in combat. Number 2. Next, we have the dazzling unnamed baby that was born in China. It was the first quirk that was ever discovered, and it caused the baby to glow. We know that the baby could light up a room with its glow, but also that the father of the baby could look at it without being blinded by the light. Thus, the quirk pretty much turns the possessor into a human light bulb. The human emanates light, and best case scenario, the quirk could, with enough practice, allow the user to do a solar flare type move and blind the opponent for some moments. But this quirk can easily be overcome with a cool pair of shades. The fact that the possessor glows makes it even harder for them to conduct sneak attacks and catch the enemy by surprise. So since the best that this quirk could probably do is make an opponent squint at night, it makes sense that it would be so high up on this list. On the bright side, with this quirk you could read books or manga all night long without having to pay expensive electricity bills. So come to think of it, I wouldn't mind having this power myself. Number 1. And finally, the number 1 weakest and worst quirk in the My Hero Academia universe is One for All. Well, sort of. To be specific, it's one of the 2 quirks that came together to create the One for All quirk that our protagonist inherited from All Might. If you don't know, I'll tell you the origin of One for All without giving too many spoiler-esque details. Once upon a time, there were 2 brothers. The older brother, who could take quirks and use them for himself or transfer them onto others, gave his seemingly quirkless brother a quirk that allowed him to stockpile power. However, this little brother wasn't actually quirkless. He had a quirk that allowed him to pass on his quirk to another. These 2 quirks merged and created One for All. It is the quirk that allows one to pass on a quirk that I think is probably the worst quirk in My Hero Academia. If it weren't for the very unlikely event of having a quirk transferred to him by someone else, the younger brother would have simply died without knowing he ever had a quirk. Also, if his brother didn't happen to have that extremely convenient power, he would not have exhibited any special power at all throughout his whole life. He could have been quirkless, and there literally would have been no difference. However, as I said before, under the right circumstances, if the stars align, even the worst quirks can be extremely useful. The older brother happened to give the younger brother the stockpiling quirk, and it combined with what was previously an utterly pointless quirk, and created one of the strongest quirks in the My Hero Academia world. And I think that's one of the coolest things about My Hero Academia. Even the weakest person in quirk has the potential to become the strongest. And there it is, guys, the top 10 worst quirks in my opinion. I bet you never guessed that in a way, the weakest and worst quirk was in Deku. Albeit in a mutated and greatly enhanced form, but still, it's pretty interesting if you think about it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We really appreciate the support you guys have given us. I mean, we're almost at 50,000 subs. That's crazy. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, make sure to Detroit smash that like button and leave any suggestions for future videos you want to see in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more My Hero Academia greatness. And until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.